1, 2, 3, 4. Well, you got it.
Hi, my name is Laura Gao. I'm the Professional Learning Facilitator, and I'm going to tell you more about Early Years and Childcare.
That was Kingston's own The Meringues with the track Tell Me Twice from last year's YGK Music. Find this track and many more at cityofkingston.ca/YGK Music. Welcome to Tell Me More, the City of Kingston podcast. I'm Rob Hosier, your host and a communications officer here at the City of Kingston. To my left, physically distanced, masked, and ready for back to school with his brand new backpack is our producer Paul Whittingham, also communications officer here at the City. And finally, behind the scenes is communications officer, editor, and journalist at large, Julie Lee Stitt. And of course, you heard from our guest at the top of the episode. That's us here deep in the Counselor's Lounge in City Hall, and we really want to thank you for joining us. If you've caught our first couple episodes, definitely welcome back. Thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe, rate, all that good stuff where you get your podcast. It really helps our exposure, and it really helps us get to the ears of folks that may not have found us before. I'd like to recognize Kingston is on the traditional homeland and territory of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat. And thank you to these nations for their care and stewardship. A little about me. I'm originally from the BC Lower Mainland, and my ancestry is Irish-English. So, Paul, today's kind of like our back-to-school episode. It's being released late August. We got school coming up next month. Visions, imaginings of sharpened pencils and erasers and backpacks, like your shiny new backpack there, kind of dazzled the imagination. Except, for our guest here and the subject that we're talking about here, I want you to imagine something a little bit different. Imagine a room full of little children staring at you expectantly. Let me make it one step more real for you. Every child is fidgeting. Doesn't matter what they're fidgeting with. It could be their hands or shoelaces, whatever. What matters is that pent-up energy that's slowly ticking away. Meanwhile, another child to your left seems slightly bored, and meanwhile, on the right, one's having a full meltdown. Now, as the tallest person in the room, it's up to you not to only keep these children alive, but to make sure they're cared for, supported, engaged, challenged, and ready for the next step in their development when that time comes. Oh, and fed and all the other stuff too. Terrifying, right? I get chills just thinking about it, but this scene doesn't scare today's guest. Laura Gao has stared down situations like this hundreds of times, sometimes several times a day. She didn't shudder with terror. In fact, she loved it. Laura is an early childhood educator who spent years working with young children. But after years on the front lines, Laura was looking for something different, something that could allow her to have a positive impact on more people and to support the professionals she worked alongside for so many years. And she found it. Today, Laura Gao is a professional learning facilitator at the City. In this role, Laura supports her former colleagues who continue to work on the front lines, delivering licensed childcare and educational programming. She creates community. She creates learning opportunities. And unofficially, she is a huge champion of the people who work in this critical industry and who we entrust our children to. In this episode of Tell Me More, Laura is going to tell us more about how supporting children today can help create healthier communities moving forward, something Laura and her colleagues have known for a really long time. Without further ado, Laura, welcome.
So tell me you'll take me home tonight, and tell me where you've been all my life. Nothing you say feels right.
Laura, I've known you for about 3 years through my work with the City's Housing and Social Services Department. Actually, Paul, I believe, Laura, you're our second Housing and Social Services Department guest. We had Joanne Boris on episode 2 with homelessness. So happy to have you here. In that time, I've gotten to know you as one of the kindest, steadiest, smartest, and most compassionate people I know. You really are. I know listeners can't hear this, but she's blushing. But it's a definite pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you so much. That's very kind.
Now, I admit, before this podcast, I didn't know much about your background. It's kind of been revealed to me as we've worked together on different projects and things. But it's something that came out when we decided to sit down and have this chat to kind of flush that out a little bit. So tell me more about how you went from working in a childcare environment to working for the City of Kingston.
Absolutely. Well, I've always found working with young children really fascinating. And as I got to learn more about how young children learn and grow, I came to be familiar with how important those first few years of life are and how crucial experiences are during that time frame. And I fell in love with becoming an early childhood educator and have been working in the sector for quite a number of years at this point in time. And when I made the move from working in a childcare program with children and with families to the municipal setting, it was quite a change. I certainly missed the children and the families I was working with, just that laughter, that being in the moment with those young folks every day. But moving to the municipal sector was really an amazing opportunity to connect with other educators and to talk about the things I'm really passionate about those first few years of life and those experiences that children have, and the things that early childhood educators and childcare workers can do to enhance those first few years and to partner with parents and to create amazing opportunities for young children.
Absolutely. And so you basically went from a hands-on, micro approach. You're dealing with individual kids, individual families, but now you have the opportunity to have almost like a meta approach where you can deal with educators, you can deal with systems, you can deal with, what's actually going on in the background to facilitate those doing the micro work in a much broader way. Do you feel like you're having an impact through that channel, through that new kind of overarching kind of view on the system?
Absolutely. It's such a privilege to be able to work in this way and to connect with other educators. And I hear amazing feedback from the community about, and really it's not about me, it's about the work that the educators put in that I'm creating opportunity for, and that is helping them to grow and to build their practice, to offer their best to our community and to the young children that they serve.
Do you ever find yourself up against this perception that a municipal government's main role should be building roads, collecting waste? Do you ever get asked why the city is working with early childhood educators?
That's a great question. I get asked all sorts of questions when I'm working out in the community, including about roads and other things like that.
I think we all do. You work for the city? What about that pothole in front of my house?
Absolutely. There's always those types of questions. But I find families and educators who are new to the area, new to the sector, really fascinated with what I do, and wanting to learn more about my background and about what it is that I offer to the educators who are working in the community. And so my role is to offer communities of practice, which are professional learning networking opportunities, organize workshops, work one-on-one with programs, work with small groups of educators, to really contribute to those educators and those programs working toward their professional learning goals and the goals that they have for their program. As well as that, childcare and earlier services, my colleagues who work with me administrate childcare subsidies, so they work to make childcare affordable for families, which is hugely important. It is. And in addition to childcare, we have some incredible early on educators working in our community as well in the early on child and family programs, and work with them as well to support their goals for their programs.
It seems like when you're dealing with, again, going back to that micro hands-on one-on-one, or even running a center, running a childcare center or something, you're so focused on the little ones, you're so focused on the families, you're so focused on the day-to-day that it's critical to have that support outside of the immediate needs of the day, the support with all the things you just mentioned. Is that kind of the role the city really kind of fills in a lot of those blanks in the managerial type roles, or like with housing or anything like that?
The city definitely has sort of a behind-the-scenes role, working with our service providers, collaborating to take a look at what the community needs and to really be responsive with our childcare and our early on programs. And so it's a privilege to be part of that work.
That's awesome. And especially now, in the past 18 months, we've come to appreciate early childhood care and education a little bit more. Do you think that the pandemic has changed how we see childcare as a society, as a community?
Oh, absolutely. I think back in March of 2020, there was sort of a huge shockwave that went through the community as childcare programs, schools, early on programs, everything just sort of shut down. And parents found themselves at home trying to work from home while also keeping their children safe and engaged, or other parents found themselves really scrambling because their work can't be done at home. And so looking for kind of family, friends, neighbors, somebody to care for their child. So that definitely had a huge impact on people's employment and people's well-being, state of mind, and also with the early on programs, that support network that so many families rely on definitely changed. Our early on providers were incredible, pivoting really quickly to offer different ways of staying connected, staying engaged, reaching out to families, whether it's Zoom programs, phone calls, different types of things like that. And depending on what the COVID situation is doing, they've been kind of on again, off again with in-person programs. Fortunately, at this point in time, we are back in person, and and those educators were so excited to be able to welcome their families back.
It's their forte, being face-to-face with these folks, at a safe distance, of course. But, to the daunting task of trying to keep someone at that developmental level or that age engaged online or engaged, I was amazed with the innovation that the early on providers get and the content rapidly that these folks were putting out to provide to families, to bridge those gaps, to provide that time throughout the day of structure.
Absolutely, and the early on educators recognize that online is not an ideal format, but they worked hard to make it function. And what they were offering was all about opportunity for parents and children to connect together in their own homes, and working to facilitate that. Our licensed childcare folks were incredible too in the pivot that needed to take place there. A couple of weeks after that shutdown in March of 2020, we got up and running with that emergency essential worker childcare. So we had service providers who were offering that. So those folks who can't be at home working from home could access childcare. And then in June of 2020, the childcare system as a whole began to reopen and has been operating straight through ever since. Yes.
Fingers crossed, knock on wood. We're going to continue that train going.
Absolutely. And so those educators have worked so hard to keep everybody safe. There's all sorts of new protocols and safety measures as well, similar to early on. But those safety measures really changed how they were working. So they've found new ways to offer a program that has that safety and well-being in mind, while still continuing to offer incredible opportunities to young children.
And that's almost that's a dual role. You're providing the material, the ways to keep the children engaged, but you also have this massive system of cleaning and regulations around already a really big stack of regulations to operate a child care center, an early on center, or something like that. So in addition to these, you have this whole new set of really critical guidelines, but you have to make sure that all these kids are entertained, they're engaging, they're having meaningful play and things like that too. That amazes me, and the pivoting that went on in all areas by our service providers in general was just awesome. But beyond the economy, beyond the fact that we can get people to work, that children are cared for, they're someplace safe, they're doing something important. Beyond all that, we know that children benefit from early education opportunities. You hinted at that at the top of the episode. Why is the work being done by our ECE professionals so important? And if I can kind of add on to that question a little bit, what what's the city doing to support these professionals in the programs they provide?
Absolutely. So there's something really incredible that happens in the early years of life. Through the first few years, there is incredible growth that's happening inside a young child, particularly in their brains. And the experiences that a young child has in those first few years quite literally build the wiring, build the architecture of that child's brain.
Wow.
And it's
no
pretty,
pressure, parents.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. And that wiring, that architecture, it contributes to how that person functions for the rest of their life, and those sort of early lessons that people carry with them. And the incredible news about all of that is young children learn best through relationships.
Exactly.
Just being there, being present with your child, taking the time to talk with them, to listen to them, smile, play peekaboo, all of those things, those moments that you take with your child, they're building that child's brain and contributing to an incredible future for that child.
Can have the 1-2 punch. You have that the cognitive development is happening within the actual activity itself. That seems obvious to us. You know, you're playing, you're engaging things, but the relationship building, the interaction, the time with mom and dad, the time with the caregiver, the time with the teachers, the time with other students, all this contributes to that overall cognitive development. Is that true?
Absolutely. All of the experiences that a young child has are learning experiences. When the world is a brand new place, you're learning about everything.
Absorbing everything.
Absolutely. And early childhood educators have a really incredible privilege to walk along that journey with parents, to partner with parents in those early learning moments, and to offer really unique and varied opportunities to young children. Something that early childhood educators do very well is what's called Emergent Curriculum. Okay. And they really focus in on the child or the group of children that they are with to figure out what questions those children are asking, what investigations those children are making, what they're interested in, what's really capturing their attention. And then they plan their curriculum, their learning experiences based on that, based on what they're seeing from the children. And so that planning process is really ongoing and never stops, and it's very, very much kind of in the moment, and those educators are really, really keen observers and amazing partners with the children as they figure out what the world is all about.
That's amazing. It's almost, and to put a city nerd slant on this, it's almost like mini public engagement, where you're observing and you're collecting data on what what is interested to the population, and then you're applying that afterwards, and you're using that data to facilitate action afterwards. But that's amazing. The care and consideration that must take. I think if an observer was to walk into one of these centers, they may, on any given day, they may see what we describe in the description a little bit now and then, that it might seem like that there's a lot going on, it's a little bit chaotic. However, that there might be purpose beyond all those different activities and those things spinning in all those different plates.
Absolutely. And so one of the huge misconceptions that we come across is children are just playing, or it's just play. Play is how children learn. It's how they make sense of the world. They take time to figure out cause and effect, to figure out trial and error. They might stack up that same tower of blocks 10 times to have it come toppling down. And there's incredible value in those moments of play where children are figuring out, how the physical world around them works, what the properties of those materials, like what are blocks all about. But they're also figuring out some internal lessons as well. They're coming to understand that they can be effective, they can create change, they can have success, they can try over and over again until they get there, they can persevere. I think there are incredible lessons that as adults we can take away and learn from young children. You know, a little person learning how to walk, they fall down hundreds and hundreds of times. They get back up and they try again and they keep going because they are so determined.
And if we add, just a little bit of guidance, a little bit of imagination, a little bit of challenging of the play and things like that, then look at those. That's when the miracles happen, and that's where development just starts blossoming.
Absolutely.
That is incredible, and it's a great way to kind of to put on that aspect of the service provision at a very kind of detailed level, but at kind of a more broad level, speaking to parents of this particular age group, which is.
Well, depending on the program, our licensed childcare programs serve children from birth to age 12. The school age programs before and after school, as well as the full day programs for younger children. And our early on programs serve children and families birth to 6 years.
Perfect. So we're covering the gamut pretty much of age groups and things like that. Can you explicitly tell me what the city support looks like in this area as far as programming? Pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, however you want to describe it. What is a good overview of these programs, what the city offers in partnership with the service providers? Absolutely.
So one of the key pieces for families is the childcare subsidy program, which which the city of Kingston administers for our area. And that program really exists to make childcare more affordable, more accessible for families. So families who are hoping to access childcare and have questions about that can reach out to the city or go onto the city's website, cityofkingston.ca/childcare, and find out more about how to access childcare subsidy. We also administer the centralized waitlist for childcare, which means it's kind of a one-stop location for families who want to access childcare to get their names on waitlists for the programs that they're interested in. And behind the scenes, we work with the service providers on all of those professional learning pieces I mentioned, but also on some of the administrative pieces that keep the system running. And
tell me a little bit more about the professional learning.
Absolutely. So
these are ECE professionals, I assume.
Yeah. Early childhood education professionals, people who hold the title of registered early childhood educator, and others who work in the childcare system.
Parallel services and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And staff who are early childhood assistants or educators working in the program who don't happen to hold the qualification. Everybody is welcome. And pre-pandemic, we used to meet at a library or a community center, somewhere like that. We'd all sit around tables together and talk about our practice and talk about new information and how it might apply to our practice, read articles together, watch videos from experts, that sort of thing, and really digest that and figure out what it means for us as educators. And also from time to time we would have workshop presenters, that type of thing. And the incredible thing about that is because those educators are in ratio with children all day, they take time out of their evenings or on a weekend to be there to have those conversations. They are so dedicated that, after a long, tiring day, that they will still show up and be present for those conversations.
It's amazing. It's seeing a bunch of early childhood educators in a library setting or something. That's kind of a natural environment, so it's almost seeing them in the wild in some respects. I commend them because with the pandemic, do people have the bandwidth to learn new things? I see there's a high level of collaboration. I assume that went online a little bit too afterwards, and almost maybe crisis management in some respects of stuff as well. Like, what are we going to do? How are we going to run things as well? But to have those connections and that collaboration must be just absolutely essential.
It really is. And when COVID hit, we moved online, and so those meetings that used to take place in the library, they're happening over Zoom. And educators are still present. They are still coming out. They are still participating. They are still wanting to talk about their practice and how they can offer their best to children through everything that all of us are facing going through this pandemic. The dedication is still so apparent.
It sounds like you want to give a shout out to your ECE folks.
they are amazing. Yeah.
That's awesome and well deserved. Absolutely well deserved. Shifting our focus now a little bit to the families. This could be our concluding question. What would you say to families as we enter a new school year? This podcast is happening at the end of August. We're getting to back to school and things like that. For these particular age groups, it might be earlier than school age or after school programs with school age children. What would you say to families as they enter the new school year?
Absolutely. There's even with the younger children, there's still often lots of transition at this time of year with possibly older siblings going off to school, or that group of preschoolers heading off to kindergarten for the first time, and there's all sorts of transitions there. Just take the time to connect and be present with your child. Listen to what they have to say, ask them about their day. And when you're facing those stressful moments, remember that that's stressful for the young child too, and just be present with them there. You don't have to fix everything. You can't fix everything, but yeah, it really is. But just be present and let them know they're loved.
And do you have a strategy for a father of a 12-year-old that when you ask about their day, they say, nothing much?
Well, you don't say how.
I'm asking for a friend.
Yeah. Well, you can ask more leading questions rather than the general, tell me about your day.
Okay. Laura, thank you so much. We've learned so much about the actual system itself, the advantages of early childhood intervention, and really making a powerful intervention at that point to really guide the future. We've learned about the ECE professionals. We've learned a whole lot. This was a school day, so no matter what happens, you enter the room, we're going to learn. So we really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for having me here. It was lovely to have this conversation today.
Remember to subscribe and rate us wherever you get your podcasts. If you have a topic for a future episode, tell us more. Tweet at City of Kingston using hashtag #TellMeMore, or send us an email at tellmemore@cityofkingston.ca. For more on this episode, visit cityofkingston.ca/podcasts. Tell Me More is produced by the City of Kingston's Communications and Customer Experience team.
Thanks for listening. Now, why not get involved? Get Involved Kingston is our online platform where you can share your ideas for making Kingston a better place to live, work, and play. Once you sign up, it's easy to follow and participate in engagement opportunities that will help shape projects, policies, and initiatives. Go to cityofkingston.ca and you can't miss it. Paul, are you involved?